it takes time. You have to build a relationship. You meet someone probably 6 or 7 times before they truly even understand what it is that you do.
Follow the Leader features dynamic women entrepreneurs in their journeys to becoming a success in business. This podcast is an inspirational space for entrepreneurs, future entrepreneurs, and thought leaders as they share their keys to success. I am Chanel Christoph Davis, the CEO and founding partner of the largest woman and minority-owned sales tax advisory practice in the country, Davis & Harmon, LLC. So today on Follow the Leader podcast show, I'm so honored to welcome to the show Adrienne Trimble. She is the president and CEO of the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council. She is a known thought leader for advancing corporate diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Trimble brings to this position the same executive vision and record of achievement that defined her remarkable career at Toyota Motor North America, where she served as General Manager of Diversity and Inclusion. In her role in Toyota, Trimble worked closely with the company's senior leadership team in developing advocacy and accountability measures to integrate DEI processes across the organization's business operations. He also worked closely with the company's External Diversity Advisory Board, chaired by the Honorable Alexis Herman, former United States Secretary of Labor. She led the company's rise on the Diversity Inc. Top 50 list from number 42 to number 25 in 2 short years. So your legacy and your, background is just amazing.
Thank you.
Know you through Toyota. And midstream, you are, right after I got to really know you and follow you, it was announced that you were going to be our president and CEO of the National Minority Supplier Diversity Council, which we say for short is the NMSDC. And I was so thrilled about that. So I just wanted to say welcome to the show. And how are you doing today?
Well, thank you for that. And thank you for that great introduction. It's been a journey, and it's been very rewarding, but very challenging trying to help support our minority businesses through these difficult times of COVID-19. As you can imagine, I'm sure we've all seen the data that shows that while COVID-19 has been, wreaking havoc on our entire U.S. economy, it's hitting our minority businesses especially hard. So my time these days is really spent on trying to make sure that they get the resources and financial assistance that's needed, not just to sustain their operations, but so we can help them get to the other side of this pandemic. So, yeah. But it's busy.
Yes, we want minority companies to survive, not only survive, but thrive through this pandemic. So I can say personally, because just a little bit of a side note, my business, Davis & Harmon, we are certified MBEs through the National Minority Supply Diversity Council, but we're also certified WBE. So that's how I came to know you, was through these advocacy organizations. So what I do as a small business owner, been in business for 19 years, a lot of people come to me advice. And the first thing I tell them is they need to be connected with some sort of advocacy group or network.
Absolutely. And there's power in that because the resources are plentiful. And if you can't get it from one source, there are many other sources that you can tap into. So you're absolutely right. When you think about the power of being connected to a network, for NMSDC, we have 23 regional affiliates throughout the country that serves from coast to coast, north to south, that we can connect easily with our corporate members who are located either their national corporate members or their local members, as well as minority business enterprises that are all across the country. And one thing that I've always said about the NMSDC network, it's like a family. Once you're in, you're in. You can pick up the phone and call anybody to get help, hear lessons learned, hear best practices. Some folks are calling them learn survival tactics these days. So it's really important to make sure that you tap into those advocacy groups and that power that's available to you, because you never know who you might meet that can completely change the whole trajectory of your business.
Absolutely. And again, it's one thing that we've leaned on heavily through this crisis. I would say we've been through, this is our 4th recessionary period we've been through as a business owner. And we didn't have the advantage of being so networked in when we went through the '08 crisis. We weren't as involved. We were certified, but we weren't as active. So I think this time around, the greatest gift, I would say, that we have been given is the fact that we put in the time and put in the effort to actually get networked into the council so that we can actually know what's going on. Because as small business owners, we can't be everywhere, but the council, you guys, your ears are to the ground. You're gathering information from multiple sources, and then you're bringing it back to the membership.
That's so important. Getting your certification is one thing, but actually using it and being engaged is something completely different. And I used to tell people this all the time when I was at Toyota. I had my A pile of minority businesses or diverse suppliers that were trying to do business with us. I had the B pile, and then I had the see you later pile. And that see you later pile were usually those folks who never showed up and only came around when they wanted a contract. And we kept trying to tell them, it takes time. You have to build a relationship. You meet someone probably 6 or 7 times before they truly even understand what it is that you do.
Yeah.
So you have to be visible. You have to be present. You have to be in the moment. You have to be engaged in order for your certification to really work.
So okay, I love that we went there because you said 3 things that's so key to me. So I want to go back to your Toyota days because I'm going to be honest, we've been certified since 2010, but we didn't nearly get the benefits or understand the network. We didn't even understand what we were a part of until I would say it's been a few years now that we really got, really active in understanding how to use it. It's cute to have the certificate, but it's a piece of paper. So talk to me about that. Talk to me about your days at Toyota. And you've been in this D&I game for so long. I want to know, what have you seen change since you first was introduced to diversity and inclusion? And talk to me about that experience of talking to suppliers and trying to get them connected and understand, make that connection.
Absolutely. So for those who don't know, my background is actually, I'm a human resources professional. I started off in the human resources world, and I was doing diversity and inclusion work and didn't even realize that's what I was doing.
Wow.
Because one of the reasons I went into human resources is that I wanted to be involved in a part of the company that could actually impact change and ensure that there was consistency and access to opportunity for all employees working within a company so they can have the benefit of being able to contribute just like anybody else. If the playing field was level, policies were level, and that I had a seat at the table to help craft those policies to ensure equity and fairness in the way they were being interpreted. So after working in human resources for a while, I received an opportunity to go into supplier diversity, which was supposed to be just a 2-year development assignment to give me exposure to another part of the business. I would get this and go back into HR. That was the plan. But I tell you, when I went into supplier diversity, I saw diversity and inclusion from a whole new perspective. I understood it inside the company and what it meant to be, to have inclusion practices and working with your business partner groups or employee resource groups, whatever you want to call them, making sure you had good recruitment processes in place to attract talent. But when you get to the supplier diversity field and you start talking about economic impact and economic development, that has much broader implications for our communities, particularly communities of color. So for me, that was my first introduction to the National Minority Supplier Development Council, coming in, understanding what this organization was really about. And that was in 2005, had no idea what it really meant. But what I saw in working with the different councils, I was able to serve on the board of 3 different councils. I was the board chair for the Ohio Council at that time. And I think that what made it so important for me to where I understood it was that I saw the people that were around the table, that they weren't there just because they were trying to get business. They were there because they were trying to make a difference in their communities.
Yes.
It was about wealth building. And I would tell folks all the time, look, I'm your biggest advocate, but I'm not here to make you rich. I'm not here to make you personally rich. I'm here to help ensure our communities get resources, job creation, and the infrastructure to be self-sustaining so that we can take care of our own. If you think back to like the 1920s, 1930s, when Black communities particularly were especially strong, it was when we had our own businesses. It was when we had that own self-sufficiency and we had our own grocery stores, our own dry cleaners, all the things that we needed within our communities. Our kids could grow up, have jobs that would become available to them. We've lost a lot of that. Other ethnic groups still do that, but we still have to think about it from a whole. How do we make sure that all of these communities of color get the same economic inclusion that nets so much fruit for those who are looking to be engaged in helping to sustain their companies. So for me, that is what NMSDC was all about. And I remember listening to Harriet Michelle, who was the president at that time. She preached about that from it was personal. You don't do this work because you are trying to collect a paycheck. This truly is a passion. You have to understand how you can use your talents to be able to help others achieve their goals and their objectives, that it will eventually net the type of change and support in our communities that we need. When you think about the power of NMSDC and those councils, those folks that are around that table have the ability to make significant sourcing decisions that impact who gets in and who doesn't. So I would always remember being at trade shows, and I would stand there and there'd be a long line of folks coming to me.
Oh my gosh, the lines are so long, right?
Ooh, they would be so long. But what I would tell them is that, don't approach this thinking that this is about a contract. Approach this thinking this is about a relationship. And how do you create or understand what business solutions or business problems we're trying to solve, and how you can bring solutions that will be helpful, so that when I go back and advocate on your behalf, I'm not just going back saying, hey, we've got this great minority-owned company, can you give them a shot? Here's a great solution that we have for a problem, and guess what? They just happen to be a minority-owned business that can, help us in terms of customer engagement, customer reach, marketing efforts, creating that discretionary income in communities that may have been overlooked, so that, guess what? Now they can afford to buy a Toyota. We put some money into those communities. Right. So that's how I had to think about it. It really helped them understand the business case. And once you leave with the business case, it's not about black, it's not about white, it's only about green. And when you start thinking about it from that perspective, everybody understands it, gets it, and that's how you get everybody to understand why this work is important.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that you made the connection, because the majority of the people understand diversity and inclusion from an internal corporate perspective. But to take it to the next level and really make the leap and help people understand supply diversity, which, like you said, has a far-reaching economic impact. Because if you have strong Black businesses, I don't know the statistics on this, you probably know better than I, that typically minority-owned businesses hire people and employees from disadvantaged and underutilized communities. So we're giving back in so many ways. We're the ones that give our minority communities their first internship, their first job, to give them something on their resume that stands out. We're giving those opportunities. We're really impacting our entire community. So it's a bigger economic impact.
Absolutely, and you're right. We did our economic impact study in 2019. And what it showed us was that of the firms that were certified with NMSDC, when you look at their workforce, 80% of that workforce was from the minority community.
Yes.
So that's 80%, and that's significant. We have studies that show us that minority companies tend to hire minority people at a much greater extent than non-minority companies.
Absolutely.
And when you walk through and you do the plant tours or the facility tours, and you go to these organizations, you can see it. These are jobs being created in communities that ordinarily would not have these jobs or have access to these jobs. So it's definitely a very strong business case that supports why this work is so important.
Yes. And when people ask me, what's my why has changed significantly over the years. We've been in business 19 years, but my why now is I'm building the firm that I wish I would have had when I graduated from college. When I received my degree in accounting, I worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. There was no Davis and Harmon. And I wish that I would have had a firm to aspire to that had leaders that looked like me. So that's my why. I want to give opportunities to, minority communities so they can get into accounting and finance and tax and build their credentials and go off and do amazing things in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that's what, when I say it's a passion, that's what it is for me, because it was the same philosophy. Being able to look across the room and see people that look like me and creating that generational wealth in our communities that we're seriously lacking. And again, it goes back to having that discretionary and disposable income created in those communities that have been traditionally underserved and just completely left out of the economic inclusion cycle.
Yeah, and then also talking about being an MBE, all business is about relationships. That's so key that if I tell anyone who's not certified, who's seeking a certification, or if you're certified and you're not using your certification, all business starts with relationships. You have to first establish relationships. You have to show up. People have to be able to recognize you when they see you. If you show up the first day, don't expect to leave with a contract. It doesn't work that way.
That is exactly right. I would tell people all the time, when it comes down to who people do business with, they do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And it takes time to establish those types of relationships. And I would feel, I used to feel really bad because I would meet so many different entrepreneurs and I'd be so impressed by them. But because, it's so many, you don't remember all of them. So you have to sometimes bring your buyers out to these events year after year after year after year. And they may meet the same people, but by the third or fourth time, that may be the time that opportunity is up on the table for consideration. And now that they know who you are, it's an immediate reaction to, okay, I need to remember that this is the business that I met. Then now we have that opportunity. Now let's try to figure out how we can get this person in the door. It doesn't just happen right away. And sometimes it does, but that's rare. It's really, to your point, building that relationship over time and having those connections where you just follow up until that magical moment hits where now opportunity meets the preparation that you have, and there you have your success story.
So I do believe that the companies that are going to thrive through this pandemic, they really have done and laid that foundation. They've been building these relationships, making these inroads for years. So now you're not trying to start something new and get involved, during a pandemic. You're really calling on those folks that you've been reaching out to over the past 2, 3, 4 years.
That's exactly right. And what I found even through this pandemic is that those businesses that are more resilient, that are being more innovative, they're trying to find ways that they can find business solutions even in this pandemic to
Absolutely.
say, okay, here's what I can bring to the table. How can I help you? And now I can be a conduit to help make those matches and those connections between, these are some of the corporate partners that I know what they're looking for. Here are some of the minority businesses that I know have made the ability to kind of shift their focus and to focus on an area where there's a stronger need.
Yeah.
That's how we get through this pandemic together. It won't work for everyone, but there are partnerships out there, again, all going back to establishing those relationships and making sure that you have the ability to partner with those folks that you may be able to bring something to the table that they don't necessarily have.
So I think we built the case for why it's important to be certified and to not only get the piece of paper, but use the piece of paper, because, we're going to come out of this. This is not going to last forever. So, start to develop your roadmap now. Think about what you're going to do and how you're going to pivot out of this crisis. And, if you're not involved, make that one of your priorities, is to get involved in NMSDC and to see what you guys are all about. Because I can say personally, you have made an impact on my business. And I tell everyone that I can about you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think people, unless you experience, unless you show up, get involved, you won't understand the true benefit of the power of the network. And with having 23 regional councils around the country, there are a number of opportunities that people can get engaged. There are different committees they can serve on. There are different ways that they can support the council with some of the deliverables that they have. There are a number of ways that folks can get involved, and we strongly encourage it. We're a small nonprofit. We can't do all this work ourselves. So there's talent that you can bring to the table, that you can showcase. These are the types of skills or competencies that your business has. Our corporate members can see that, and then they can say, well, I didn't think about them from that regard. Maybe that's a company that I can reach out to. So there's definitely benefits to membership.
Absolutely. And the way you guys are structured, you mentioned that you have partnering councils all over the country. I'm a member of DFW's Minority Supply Diversity Council based in Dallas, Texas. That's the certifying arm that I use, and the council that I'm a member of locally. But there are councils all over the country. So you don't have to be in Dallas, Texas to get connected to a council.
That's absolutely right. And if anyone is looking for that information, they can go to nmsdc.org. All 23 of our affiliate councils are listed there. You just click on it and it gives you information in terms of how to get connected to your local council.
All right, and we're going to drop that information in the show notes. But I also want to pivot now to a different side of this conversation. What I have seen you do, Adrienne, I have to give you your props. And I do believe you're supposed to give people their flowers when they have deserved them and earned them. You stepped into the organization right before our Austin convention. That was my first national convention I ever attended. And you pivoted from being a corporate leader, executive level at Toyota, to taking on the realms of being the president and CEO for the NMSDC. And the very first time I saw you in the leadership role through NMSDC was at the conference in Austin, Texas. And it was an amazing pivot for the organization. You have breathed, and I'm telling you as an MBE, I'm giving you my feedback here. You have breathed life into this organization. What you have contributed has been a tour de force. One of the first initiatives you've made after the actual conference was you did a town hall series where you came to several of the different council offices and talked to us directly and asked us as MBEs what we wanted to see change in the organization. And that type of leadership, I tell you, is what's needed in 2020 and in this crisis to turn this whole process and this whole organization around. So I want to give hats off to you and let you know that I see what you're doing. I think you're amazing. You even brought back the Women of Color Conference, which for me, I've attended all of the webinars and they have been phenomenal. We're going to talk about that too. But I just want to take this time to tell you that I am so amazed at what you're doing.
Well, thank you for that. And, it's an honor to actually be sitting in this seat today. NMSDC has a rich legacy that was built primarily by Harriet Michelle. I have to give her props and give her flowers as well, because she created a significant organization, and really not just for minority business development, but for supplier diversity overall. Yes. And a lot of the other advocacy groups, their principles are built upon what NMSDC established back in 1972. And what people don't realize is that our organization was created not by minority businesses or by Black businesses. It was created by white CPOs that said, we want to make sure that our companies have a way to be able to reach minority-owned businesses. So having that type of legacy in place and understanding what the core mission of the organization is, it's an honor to be here getting it positioned to prepare for the next 50 or so years to being able to serve our corporate members as well as our minority businesses. When I was making the decision to make the transition out of Toyota, it was not an easy decision to make. I had a very long career with Toyota. I was, accelerated through the ranks, but there was always something about the work that I was doing that said, I always gravitated back to the supplier diversity side of D&I.
Yes.
And I always wanted to understand what was happening with our minority businesses, particularly how could I help them? How can I make sure they were still getting connections within the company? And so when the board of directors approached me about this position, the first time they asked me, would I be interested in taking on the role? I was like, no, not in a million years.
A lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
How many members do you have?
I'm sorry?
How many MBEs are certified?
There are about 12,000 certified MBEs.
Yeah, so that's a huge undertaking.
And I was like, absolutely not. They came back a few months later and they said, would you really consider this? Because we think that, even if it's a short term, you can help us kind of get the organization back on footing. And I'm telling you, I resisted. And finally, because of the passion in me, I said, maybe this is how my skills can really be used in a way that's meaningful and passionate for me. So when I stepped into the role, I'll never forget the first time I walked into the New York office. And it just hit me that there are all these folks behind the scenes that's making this organization work and to operate and to move forward. The people don't realize that, they see me, the spokesperson out front for the organization, but there is a whole team of people behind me that actually carry forth the legacy of the work that needs to be done. And they're the ones that I need to give the credit to and the gratitude for their willingness to continue moving forward, because it's a nonprofit. None of us are doing this because of the salary that we receive, because right. Trust me, it's a nonprofit. Right. So it's not how we're trying to make money. But when you think about the impact and again, the broader implications of economic inclusion, that it's been lost over the years. It's been, when you think about what's going on with it, it's somewhat diluted. You think about even supplier diversity professionals, they no longer, most of them have expanded their roles beyond just supplier diversity. Now they're talking about sustainability or broader supplier relations. And I'm trying to get that conversation back to why this is so important, why this work is so critical. When you look at the tax implications, the revenue implications, minorities combined they have a spending power over $3 trillion.
Yes.
This work matters, and there is a need for it. So we got to get that conversation back to where it needs to be, and that is the business case for it. This is not a social effort. This is not about social change. This is about economic impact and development for this country.
Yeah, this is not about charity.
No.
And absolutely, minority MBEs, we're more nimble. We're very innovative. We have to be. We have to be a little bit, I guess you would say, scrappy. So
yes.
we can bring to you, ideas and concepts that, larger competitors, they just can't provide. So there's a lot of value in tapping into, MBE communities for solutions and for innovation. And I'm sure
Absolutely.
You're seeing that right now.
That's exactly right. It's that innovation. And when you think about the changing demographics of this country, we already know in 2 decades, the minority will be the majority. So guess what that's going to be? That's going to be our consumers. That's going to be our workforce. That's going to be the executives who are sitting around the table making these types of decisions. So if we don't have a strategy in place for how we focus on inclusion now, it's going to be too late in 20 years when the minority is the majority. And in some states, such as ours, Texas, and in California, the minority already is the majority. So we have to make sure that we have processes in place for economic inclusion. Otherwise, it's going to have a significant impact and drain on our overall U.S. economy.
Well, I do know why they came to you and asked you to step up to this challenge. And that's evident by watching you since you've stepped up. And I thank God that you took the call. But the fact that you've been on both sides, to me, makes your impact that much greater. Like you've been in the conversation on the corporate side. You've heard the reservations. You've heard all of the reasons why this won't work. And so you've been in the room to develop the strategies to move diversity and inclusion forward from a supply diversity, perspective. So you're bringing all that knowledge. I mean, it was just a perfect divine appointment, I believe, to have you in this position at this time.
Well, I hope so. I hope that's it, because I tell you, it's a heavy lift. Someone asked me what was the biggest change for me, coming out of corporate America. Obviously, you're used to dealing with, the key part of leadership for me is about the ability to influence others, particularly influence them to do something that they may not ordinarily agree with or support. And you have to find ways to influence that thinking, to convince them to come to a solution that can be mutually beneficial, right? So it's all about that ability to influence. I could do that in corporate America all day long because that's how I was raised. I understand how we think. And, again, you're looking at the business strategy, you know how to connect the dots. What makes it challenging in this arena is that the same people that I love to support from minority entrepreneurs, those are the same folks. They're all A personalities. They're all A personalities.
Everybody's the boss.
Everyone's a boss. Everyone is driven. Everyone has the answer. Everyone has a silver bullet. And so trying to get all of these folks to kind of come together for a common solution, a common direction, common path, it's challenging. And you have to find ways to influence that thinking, to help them understand what's in it for them and how you have to leave some of that A personality on the side and trust another person to make those decisions. Most entrepreneurs aren't used to that because when they create their business, that's their baby, right? So they're not used to leaving anything on the table for anyone else to kind of influence or impact. But that's what's made it so. But I've learned a lot being in the role. Yes, it's challenging, but I've learned a lot in terms of how do you really utilize your business acumen to help all of us reach the same goal, because everyone that's in this work in these trenches together, we do have a common goal. And so how do we make sure that we stay focused on that and we use our resources collectively to be able to accomplish that common goal, even though it may not necessarily be my path. Sometimes, I remember I was meeting with one president, she said, sometimes you're not going to always get what you want, and sometimes we're not always going to get what we want. We have to know where that compromise is and when we come together so that we can continue to make progress as one organization and all these individual entities who have all these great ideas. So for me, that's the hardest part of the role. It's getting all these folks going together in one common direction and moving forward together as an entity.
Absolutely. And one thing that you just brought back, I talked about it a little bit and kind of, just touched upon it, but I want to talk about it more in detail, is the Women of Color Summit. You just kicked that off again.
Yes.
Now,
yes.
now that we're all working from home, it's on a virtual platform, and you've had some heavy hitters. The kickoff was with Carla Harris, who was a phenomenal speaker. She was the fireside chat. Then you pivoted. The next virtual summit was with Lisa Price. Today was with Felicia Butterfield, and next is with Taraji P. Henson. So first of all, I have attended each one, and I've been writing copious amounts of notes. The women have been powerful. Thank you for introducing me to the likes of a Carla Harris. I knew of her, but I wasn't as in tune with who she was and the type of dynamic speaker she was. So you're introducing me to new people. I just want to thank you for all the hard work that you're putting into putting that together.
I'll tell you, the Women of Color series is a very special initiative for NMSDC. There was a focus around women of color several years back, but as the organization has gone through transition, we kind of moved away from it because we just had other priorities. When I came on board, I said, that's the first thing that I want to recapture for NMSDC. If there is going to be an organization that is going to have a platform for women of color, it is going to be NMSDC.
Yes.
So for us to create a Women of Color series, it was definitely part of our strategic plan and our operational plan to make sure it happened this year. I want to give thanks to the Minority Business Development Agency because they really created the infrastructure based on their Enterprise of Women of Color series, and they were gracious enough to share it with us because the partnership between NMSDC and NBDA is a strong strategic one, and it's been beneficial for both of us. So while they had the content, we had the platform, we were quickly able to pivot our destination events into virtual experiences, and the partnership has been wonderful. So when we think about the ability to be able to capture these speakers, having a virtual platform actually works more to our benefit because
it really does.
Yes, it's challenging. I don't know if we would have been able to get Carla Harris to come to one of our actual events because I'm sure her schedule is crazy busy. But because we only needed 30 minutes in front of her computer for just that time, she was able to give us that type of knowledge. And you're right, she was phenomenal.
Yes, she was the perfect person to kick it off. Yes. Oh my gosh.
It was great. And just as you, I've been sitting there taking notes just the same because they are pouring into me as well. Yeah. And it's just been wonderful to hear their lessons learned, their advice, and they've been speaking candidly. You know, we as women of color, we'll give it to you straight with no chaser. And I think that's what's been so powerful about these sessions is that we really do want to help. When you think about the strength of our community, it comes from the woman of color who's usually there as the foundation, helping to support all of our needs for our community. So this has been no different. They are here to support our overall business community. It's just focused specifically on our women of color.
And I love the series because you are speaking to the whole woman.
Yes.
You know, every speaker talks about self-care. You know, they don't leave without saying, take care of yourself, be kind to yourself, be gracious to yourself. So it has been just a phenomenal platform. I just want to give you guys kudos for the work.
Thank you. And that's so important to remember because we as women, and I can speak to this as a Black woman, we usually put ourselves at the very bottom of the list, right? We take care of everyone else. Yes. We take care of our families, our jobs, our businesses, our careers, our churches, everything else. And then there's very little left over for us to take care of ourselves. Our sororities, yes. Everybody gets a piece first.
Yes.
So it's very important that I'm so glad they're including that piece of it because we do need to take care of ourselves because if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of others. So you're absolutely right. That's been so empowering to hear them remind us that it's okay to sometimes say no.
Say no and say this is not the season for it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So what have you been doing, Adrienne, during this time? I see you on so many, Zooms. I feel like we're all getting Zoom zapped. Like we're just, Zoom crazy. Just, going from one webinar, one seminar, one meeting, one, task force. I see you on all of them. So how have you been practicing self-care? What have you done that's new during this time to take care of Adrienne?
Well, I tell you, it's been a little hard because my self-care normally involves going out somewhere to either get some type of service where I'm disconnecting from everyone, whether that's getting my hair done, getting my nails done, getting a pedicure, and all of that's off limits right now. So for me, it really is getting up just a little extra early in the morning and going out in my backyard and just spending just some quiet time with just me. Maybe my dog. I might let the dog come out with me because she can't talk.
You're like, hush it.
But I really do I have to make sure I get that time to myself. So either do it early in the morning or sometimes I'll do it really late at night. You know, right now I have a house full of 20-something-year-olds because when this all broke out, everybody came home.
Yes.
And then they didn't come home by themselves. They brought people with them. So we have a whole house full of people.
House. Wow.
Full house. But for me, you have to find that time, that quiet time. And I really do make sure that I do that for me, because what I find about what I've learned about myself through this is that when I don't get that quiet time and that time just to exhale,
yes,
I get a little crabby. I get a little crabby. Yeah. So that's not a good space for me to be in, nor is it for the people that I need to work with. So I have to make sure that I do that. And it's been helpful to keep me kind of centered. And I do find times, even though right now it's a critical time for NMSDC because we know so many of our minority businesses are hurting. So I've been involved in a number of conversations with White House officials to understand how we can get funding faster to our MBEs, get them through the PPP funding process a lot faster, how NMSDC can be a conduit to make that happen. And these calls, they take place in the morning, at night, on the weekends. But there are some times that I just take my phone, leave it in the room, close the door, and just leave it there, at least for a few hours, so I can disconnect. And and that's important too. And that's hard for me because learning to say no was a very difficult word for me to learn. And to say no with no explanation was even more challenging.
Right.
But I've gotten there. I've learned how to do it and say, you know what, it's okay. Some of that comes with just, I'm at the age now where, as you get a little older, you take more liberties than you probably would have when you were younger or earlier in your career. But you learn that, this is what is necessary so that you can stay centered and stay fresh so that you can help others and you can continue to serve.
Yeah, because you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to.
That's exactly right.
It's always full. So how has the team adjusted to this virtual environment? Are you all networked together and staying connected? Because your team is amazing, let me tell you.
Yes, my team is amazing. I thank you for saying that, for recognizing my team is very amazing. I will tell you, when we first made the shift, it was a little difficult because, again, we are a nonprofit, and I'm used to Toyota systems and technology where you have a whole help desk that's available for you. Right. You have all these resources. We don't have that. So our VP of Operations and Chief of Staff, Tammy Wilkins, has done a phenomenal job of making sure that we had all of the resources and equipment that we needed, and that even though we don't have the people in place, she made sure that we were taking advantage of the external consultants that could help us get the resources that we need so we can make the pivot to get into a virtual environment. And it was a little tough because we just didn't have the internal expertise available to do it. We knew the knowledge, of course, Tammy has a phenomenal background, but she's only one person, can't do it all herself. So it took some time getting used to working through a virtual environment. And we had some team members that just weren't as technical savvy as we would have liked because they're learning too in this environment. But I tell you what's been helpful is that now that we were forced to experience this, it can help us be a lot more efficient in the future because now we know that you don't need to wait for me to show up in the office to be able to get work done. You can just pick up the phone, call me, Zoom me, Skype me, whatever is necessary to still get the direction or support or decisions made that you need. So everything happens for a reason. I believe that this was one of the reasons. Yes.
And I have to say too, my team is all millennials. So they're living their absolute best life right now.
Oh, I bet they are. Oh, yeah. This is what they've been asking for.
I mean, do we ever have to go back to the office? I mean, they have been killing the game. I've been so impressed. But, they were born for this. They're dragging us along. So
that's right.
It has been an education. Well, thank you so much, Adrienne. This has been phenomenal. One of the COVID blessings has been that I'm getting to reach out and talk to all of my dream guest list people, right? I may have not been able to get you if this hadn't happened. So thank you to the COVID people, God, for finding us. You know, I'm checking off all my dream guests, and you were absolutely on the top of my list. So thank you, Adrienne. This has been
thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be here. And for those who are interested, check out our leadership series and our Women of Color series. They'll be going on to the middle of June. So NMSDC.org is where you can get more information and get registered. Thank you so much for having me on today.
Yes, yes.
You can find all of our past episodes on iTunes, Spotify, and Google, or any of your other favorite podcast platforms. Be sure to subscribe to the show, rate, and leave us a review. Let us know how we're doing. Thank you for listening.